Hey ladies, welcome to WTF, Women Talking Frankly, a running conversation with your hosts, Kyle and Candace.
And you, about issues facing women, such as health, hormones, our looks, our libido, life, and anything in between.
We promise to dig deep and get into it each episode.
Welcome. We're so glad you joined us today. Kyle and I are very excited to have a very awesome special guest, Dr. Kenna Stevenson, today as our guest. Kenna is a native Texan, graduated with honors from the University of Texas at Austin, and has practiced medicine in diverse settings, including inside tents with Texas Mission of Mercy, in a mobile unit in the East Texas minefields, in remote regions of Guatemala and New Zealand, and inside a movie truck on a Paramount Pictures set. Wow, that sounds like another podcast. Kenna's career has included private practice, community medicine, rural medicine. She established a health center for female vets. Wow. Employee health and academic medicine. So Dr. Stevenson is board certified in family medicine and a fellow in the American Academy of Family Physicians. Her clinical research and publication topics include women's health, preventive medicine, healthy aging, cardiovascular pharmacology, and the holistic model of patient care. Kenna's research has been featured in Family Practice News, Cardiology News, OBGYN News, Medscape, and WebMD. She's consulted for Paramount Pictures, and did you get to meet any movie stars? And as the health expert for CBS, NBC television, and radio affiliates. So, need I say more, Kenna has a wonderful book that I was just rereading recently. Kyle and I have been rereading some of the chapters. It's called Awakening Athena, Resilience, Restoration, and Rejuvenation. It's an inspirational and practical guide to creating health. It's received international recognition. And also, Dr. Kenna just launched Dr. Kenna on her YouTube channel just this year. So welcome, Kenna. It's wonderful to have you here. I'm sort of bowing and scraping after that intro. But tell us, I thought maybe we could start out with a little bit of your thinking when you came up with the idea of the female archetype Athena in your book, Awakening Athena. Tell us a bit more of your thinking on that.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Kyle and Candace. Thank you for inviting me to join you on WTF. I can't tell you how much fun I've had telling people I'm going to be on WTF this week.
We're happy to have you.
And my little nephew said WWF. I said, oh no, WTF.
WWF.
So here we are. And I've so enjoyed listening to your podcast on Spotify. I have learned a lot from both of you that I can directly apply in patient care and in my own personal life. And so thank you for your message and your assistance that you're offering to women at all stages of life and all decades and phases. I decided to tap into the female archetype of Athena with my book, A Practical Guide for Women in Creating Health, because I think all women can access Athenian qualities in their own lives. We all have access to imagination, intuition, intelligence, and we can use these skills and practical knowledge to overcome circumstances and to create the circumstances and the lives that we want, despite tremendous hardship, even the hardship of birth, such as Athena experienced. She came into the world in a very difficult way. No mother figure, hostile half-siblings, an absent father. And she underwent attack almost immediately on entry into the world. And for some women in my practice, it feels like life occurred that way. But look what emerged from those circumstances, and look what she was able to achieve, and how she was able to assist others in their own battles. She is the goddess of wisdom. She's also the goddess of war. And we need both in the fight for women's health, in the fight for the true science applied to women's health.
And it is a fight. It's the good fight.
Yeah, and I was so impressed. I reread the first and second chapter of your book, and I was so impressed with your observations about women getting the short shrift in terms of medical research. We've always been put on the back burner, and there's been so little regard for women until in the last maybe 30, 40 years. So I'm so happy that you wrote this book. And even though it was written in 2004, I mean, it's almost, 17 years old, and it's still so relevant today, Kenna. You was a woman before her time, for sure.
Ahead of your time, yes.
Well, that book is my youngest daughter, because writing a book like that is kind of like having a baby in some ways.
I bet.
And at age 17, I would say her powerful message still resonates. It is a timeless message and something that I feel very comfortable sharing with my colleagues and with my patients today. So I think that it's extremely relevant information.
And I want to ask a question. As a family practice physician, it sounds like you, at some point in your career, and maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, focused on women in your practice. Is that true?
Yes, I was the director of women's health in several of my professional career roles.
Okay, that's great. Well, I was in the observations that I had about women struggling to maintain balance throughout their lives, especially through the transitional times. And I love the fact that you normalize these transitions of puberty, pregnancy, breastfeeding, and menopause, as opposed to labeling them as disease states. How do you help women identify obstacles in their lives and then empower them to take the reins back? I mean, you and I, as practitioners, have seen women sort of floundering after they've had a child or going through menopause. What is your tactic to helping women, regain the balance?
Helping them find the joy and beauty in all of these transitions and cycles and changes. Women menstruate, men don't. Women gestate, women lactate, and you know what? Women narrate. It is a whole different experience. And I think it's a very enriching experience. And I think looking at these experiences in the positive light, seeing the joy and beauty is really the key. I certainly noticed in my medical training that physicians and colleagues, students, residents seem to flee from perimenopausal women or menopausal women.
I know it.
They did not want to walk into that exam room. And I found it fascinating that women were so in tune with changes in their body and in the seasons, and they could report these very detailed symptoms. I mean, I certainly didn't hear this type of narration from everyday kind of patients. I think the menstrual cycle is tied in, of course, with the moon cycle and the tides, and it's part of our spirituality and should be embraced rather than despised. And I really rebelled against how women were categorized in my medical education and training. I remember one professor, and I would say he was a high-ranking professor in women's health, and he said, all I need to know about women is, have they started bleeding? Are they currently bleeding? Have they stopped bleeding? That's all women are, just 3 bloods. Well, I bristled at that.
You said that was something you actually learned as medical terminology in your training, the 3 bloods?
Yes.
Well, how dismissive is that? That's so dismissive.
And then in my
women.
culture of origin, it was the 3 M's. So it was the 3 bloods, the 3 M's. The M's are maidenhood, matrimony, and motherhood. And so that's how women were categorized.
The walking
womb.
Yes,
I saw vibrant women in their 40s that had never married and never mothered a child biologically, and yet they were very much alive and very feminine.
It's amazing in our society. I think the old maid terms that have come out throughout the years, hysterical, those very negative, degrading terms that have women, and we often look at women going, "Oh, she didn't have a child. What's her, value as a human being?" And I think that is such an important point to make. There are so many women who've chosen to not have children and just pursue different avenues in their life for growth and development. Candace and I were laughing before we were talking about, etiology of words before, and I said, think of the word woman. It's womb, and it's like a womb man, a man with a womb, and it's just sort of we do focus on
Not
that
funny.
womb as opposed to the whole construct of what a woman really is.
We are different, and these differences are not pathological. They're not aberrations. They're not disease states.
Right.
They are who we are as women, and it is a beautiful, wonderful thing. It is miraculous.
It is, and I was, in my practice, one of the things that I was always aware of is when we put women on these contraceptive methods, and it stops them from having ovulation and periods that are physiologic. A lot of women like that so much and they sort of begin to hate their menstrual cycle, and they want to be without a period forever. And that always made me feel sad that we don't let women still have that menstrual cycle and define their lives in a different way. Did you find that as well?
Yes and no. I would say I individualized my care, and so there were circumstances where really having the technology and the abilities to delay a menstrual cycle or postpone a menstrual cycle or suppress a menstrual cycle for a period of time was beneficial to that patient. But I would say for the majority of patients, experiencing those ebbs and flows, those highs and lows, the ins and out, the proliferation, the maturation, all the things that happen in the follicular and luteal phase should be lived and should be experienced. And there is a power in that, a mind, body, spirit integration. And that's what we were really going for.
And I know I read that book. I think Candace has read it, and you probably have too, Kenna, The Red Tent. Back in the day, it was a book about, how the Native American indigenous people would allow women who were having their menstruation, they would go into a red tent, and the rest of the women in the tribe would care for the children and do the duties and allow a woman the rest and restoration during her period. We don't allow that in our culture. It's move, move, move. So it's kind of an interesting paradox.
Yeah, I agree. I believe it's chapter 2 of my book. I talk about an award-winning paper that was presented at a medical meeting in the late 1800s. And Dr. Mary Jacoby, one of the first American female physicians, wrote the paper. And it was an investigation regarding the menstrual cycle and whether or not it was better for women to continue their activities and continue working or to take respite during the menstrual cycle. Now, what she found, this was an American study, probably industrial city based, I'm not sure, but what she found, lo and behold, is that women had better health outcomes if they continued their daily activities every day of the month. And so she presented the paper and it won the prize, but then when they found out that it was written by a female, they didn't want to give her the prize anymore.
I saw that. I actually put that in my notes. And that was my one question for you, is that she did talk about that. And I agree that women do better if they keep exercising, and moving around, not missing work. But there's that other paradox of the indigenous people sort of allowing women to sort of rest. So there's kind of a combination that we have to give women when we counsel them. It's okay to take some time off.
I agree with you. I've most recently been working with Maori population in rural, remote parts of New Zealand, and they have very strict rules, especially as it relates to menstruating women. They are forbidden from doing certain things on the marae during the time that they are menstruating. And so I respect that, and I respect those cultural contexts. And so I think I just explore the patient's own feelings, and we go from there. My mother-in-law was sharing with me last night that when she was a little girl on basketball, and I'm a huge NBA fan, I'm always talking about basketball.
Me too.
She said the reason the girls had to play half court is because they didn't think they had enough breath to run the full length of the court.
Oh, come on.
And that it might, affect their female organs in some way, too much exertion. And I think, haven't we come such a long way, and that we don't have those imposed restrictions.
I think we still have the issues with not enough studies done with women because we're seen as having all these aberrations. But we're making progress. And I wanted to read a bit from your second chapter, just this paragraph, which I think dovetails in with what we're saying. A century ago, the average lifespan of the American woman was 50 years. Today, most non-smoking American women live to be almost 80 years of age. I think the average age is for women is at 83 now, maybe a little bit
Well,
older.
I actually heard that if a woman is 55 years old and she doesn't have any major health problems, they're more likely to live to be 90. And I'm voting for that one.
Yeah, me too. I want to live to be 100. The average age of menopause, however, has not changed since the early 1900s. That's around 50, 51. So today, about 1/3 of an American woman's life is lived after menopause.
That's right.
We love that Jane Fonda, the third act.
I just
on the TED
rewatched
Talk.
it. It's the best.
So we're living another third of our lives.
Or half for some people. I hit menopause at 47. I'm 68. I'm planning, my parents both lived to be 95. It could be half my life.
Yeah, that's right. And those decades can be just as rewarding and fulfilling as in the earlier years.